In the heart of a city that pulsed with neon lights and hurried footsteps, where the rain fell like a curtain of forgotten dreams, there huddled a dog named Storm. His fur, a tangled mix of deep brown and rust that once might have gleamed under a loving hand, now clung to his shivering body in heavy, dripping clumps. Water beaded on his whiskers like unshed tears, and his eyes, those wide, soulful pools of chocolate brown, stared out from the gloom with a quiet desperation that could break the hardest heart. The world around him was a blur of shadows and splatters, raindrops dancing in the dim glow of a distant street lamp, turning the alley into a stage for solitude. Storm wasn't always alone like this. Fragments of memory tugged at him like loose threads. A warm lap to rest his head, the jingle of keys that meant walks in the park, the soft voice calling him good boy after a long day. But life has a way of unraveling the best yarns, and one careless door left ajar had sent him tumbling into this endless downpour, paws carrying him farther from home than his heart could follow. The storm had started as a drizzle that morning, a gentle patter that promised to wash away the grime of the streets. Storm had lifted his nose to it, hopeful for a moment, thinking maybe it carried scents of kindness on the wind. But as the sky darkened to an angry slate, the drops turned fierce, pounding the pavement like accusations. He sought shelter in the narrow space between two overflowing dumpsters, the air thick with the sour tang of rot and regret. His body curled tight, tail tucked against his belly, but the cold seeped in anyway, a thief stealing the last of his warmth. Hunger gnawed at him, sharper than the chill, reminding him of the empty bowls back when meals were certain. He'd scavenged earlier, a crust of bread soggy with rain, a scrap of something meaty that turned out to be more wrapper than feast. Now, as thunder grumbled overhead like a disappointed giant, Storm closed his eyes, willing the world to pause, to notice the small life trembling in its shadows. Night deepened the misery, the rain a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the city's hum. Storm's breaths came in shallow puffs, fogging the air before him, his paws numb against the slick concrete. He dreamed in flickers then, running through fields of golden grass, chasing butterflies that never flew away. A child's laughter as he licked sticky fingers clean, the solid press of a family gathered around a fire, his spot by the hearth claimed and cherished. Waking brought the sting of reality, eyes snapping open to the endless wet. A rat skittered past, bold in the dark, and Storm's lip curled in a weak snarl, more bluff than bite. He was too tired for fights, too hollow for chase. Instead, he pressed closer to the wall, the brick rough against his side, and let a soft whine escape, a sound lost to the roar but heavy in his chest. Why me? It seemed to say. What did I do to deserve this endless night? But in the weave of every dark tale, there's a thread of light waiting to pull. As midnight crept closer, footsteps splashed through the alley, not the hurried stomp of passers-by, but a slower, searching tread. Storm's ears twitched, body tensing under his sodden coat, ready to bolt or beg, whichever the moment demanded. From the mist emerged a man, mid-40s maybe, with a coat too thin for the weather and eyes shadowed by worries of his own. He carried a paper bag that crinkled softly, steam rising from whatever warmth it held. His name was Jack, a night shift mechanic whose hands smelled of oil and whose heart carried scars from a divorce that left him echoing in an empty apartment. Jack walked these alleys often, not for shortcuts, but for the quiet they offered, a place to think without the noise of regrets. Tonight, though, something pulled him here, a nudge he couldn't name, and when his flashlight beam caught the glint of wet fur, he stopped dead. "Hey, buddy," Jack murmured, voice low and steady, like coaxing a skittish engine to life. He didn't lunge or loom. Instead, he sank to one knee, rain pooling around him, and set the bag down slow. Inside was a half-eaten burger from his break, still warm, and a thermos of coffee he'd meant for the road home. He broke off chunks of the patty, tossing them gently toward Storm, the savory scent cutting through the damp like a lifeline. Storm's nose quivered, instincts warring, fear screaming run, hunger whispering stay. One piece landed close, and after a heartbeat that stretched eternal, he crept forward, snatching it up and bolting back to his corner. The meat hit his tongue like heaven, juices bursting warm against the cold, and his eyes flicked up to Jack's face, searching for the trick that never came. Jack sat there in the rain, back against the wall, talking soft as the drops fell. He shared bits of his day, the stubborn carburetor that fought him all shift, the coworker who joked about starting over, the way his old dog's photo still sat on the dashboard, faded but faithful. "Lost my boy last year," he said, voice catching. "Cancer, quick and cruel, broke me more than the ex ever did." Storm listened, head tilted, the whine in his throat easing to a sigh. Another chunk tossed, closer this time, and Storm met it halfway, chewing slow, his tail giving a flicker of wag. Jack's hand extended next, palm up, empty and still, rain tracing lines down his knuckles. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, the Storm blurring time, and then, miracle of miracles, Storm's nose brushed those fingers, cold and tentative. Jack's touch was featherlight, stroking the top of his head, avoiding the wet ears that twitched at the kindness. Dawn broke gray and grudging, the rain tapering to a mist that hung like hope deferred. Jack hadn't left. He dozed against the wall, Storm's head heavy on his thigh, a pact sealed in shivers. As light filtered in, Jack stirred, his free hand fumbling for his phone. "Gonna get you help, pal," he promised, dialing the local shelter with fingers numb from cold. They came quick, a van splashing through puddles, 2 volunteers bundled in rain gear, crates and towels at the ready. Storm tensed at the strangers, a low growl rumbling, but Jack's voice anchored him. Easy, Stormy, they're friends, and he stepped into the towel-wrapped arms without a fight, exhaustion winning over fear. The ride to the shelter was a blur of warmth from the heater, the crate a cocoon that smelled of clean hay and promise. At the shelter, the magic began. Vets with gentle hands peeled away the wet, revealing a dog whose spirit hadn't drowned, just dimmed. Baths in warm suds chased the chill, kibble bowls overflowed with hearty stew, and meds chased away the cough brewing in his lungs. Storm's coat fluffed dry, curls bouncing back like old friends, his eyes brightening from plea to sparkle. Jack visited every evening after work, sitting cross-legged in the kennel run, tossing treats and tailies until Storm's tail thumped a steady beat. "Think I'll call you Storm," Jack said one night, scratching that spot behind the ears. "Fits you wild and wonderful." The name stuck, a badge of his baptism in the rain. Adoption day came on a sun-kissed afternoon, the shelter buzzing with wags and whispers. Jack filled the papers with steady hands, his apartment already prepped, a bed by the window, toys scattered like invitations, a collar waiting with a tag that read, "Storm home at last." They drove home slow, windows cracked to let in the breeze, Storm's nose pressed to the glass, drinking in the world anew. The apartment wasn't grand, but it was theirs. Couch sags perfect for shared naps, kitchen floors cool for belly flops, balcony overlooking a park where squirrels taunted from branches. Nights, Jack would cook, steak scraps sizzling, shared over newspapers, while Storm curled at his feet, the rain outside a lullaby now, not a lament. But Storm's story didn't stay tucked in their quiet corner. It spilled out like sunlight after showers. Jack started small photos on his socials, captioned "From Alley Angel to Home Hero," and likes turned to shares, comments flooding with hearts and howls. A local news spot followed, the reporter kneeling in mock rain to capture Storm's soulful gaze, Jack's voice cracking as he said, "He saved me as much as I saved him." Donations poured for the shelter, bins of food stocked in alleys citywide, volunteers multiplying like paws in play. Storm became a symbol, his face on calendars raising funds, his wags at adoption events drawing families to the lost ones waiting. Jack found purpose again, volunteering weekends, his hands that fixed machines now mending hearts. Years danced by, Storm's muzzle silvering like storm clouds edged in light, his steps a joyful lope beside Jack's slower stride. They'd revisit that alley sometimes, leaving kibble trails and pausing to remember, the spot where despair met dawn. Jack remarried to a woman who baked biscuits and laughed at Storm's zoomies, their home filling with the patter of foster pups, each a chapter in the endless book of second chances. When Storm's time came, on a gentle rainy evening, he lay in the yard, head on Jack's knee, breaths easing into peace. The drops fell soft, washing clean the circle of life, and Jack whispered, "Thanks for the storm, boy. Cleared the way for all this sun." Storm's legacy lingered in every splash of puddle, every wide-eyed stray lifting its head at footsteps. Jack kept the photos up, the stories shared, a beacon for the lonely. And in quiet moments, when rain tapped the window, he'd smile, knowing one soaked soul had taught a city how to see through the downpour, to the hearts beating strong beneath. Because in the end, it's not the storm that defines us, but the light we find in its wake, one wag at a time. The tale wove wider still, touching lives like ripples on a pond. A kid in the neighborhood, battling his own bullies, found Storm's story online and started a club, Paw Prints of Courage, drawing strays and kids together in park meetups, tales and talks chasing fears away. Jack's wife turned the garage into a workshop, crafting collars from recycled bits, each sold to fund vet care for the street-worn. Storm's calendar hung in waiting rooms, a fuzzy face reminding folks mid-checkup that healing comes in fur and forgiveness. One viral clip, Storm shaking off water in slow-mo, eyes twinkling, sparked a trend, folks posting their pups' Storm stories, building a community of rescue warriors. Even after, Jack walked the alleys alone but never lonely, his whistle calling new friends from the shadows. A scruffy mutt named Drizzle answered first, then came Bolt and Whisper, each carrying a piece of Storm's spark. The shelter named a wing after him, Storm's Haven. Walls painted in rainy blues with paw print murals, kennels humming with hope. News crews circled back yearly, anniversaries marked with features on the man and the dog who proved love wins wet or dry. And on stormy nights, Jack would sit with a coffee thermos warm in his lap, toasting the sky, to the ones who teach us to dance in the rain. Because Storm wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder, etched in every drop, that beneath the wet and weary beats a heart ready to love, waiting only for eyes kind enough to look. And in cities everywhere, when thunder rolls, a paw lifts, a hand extends, and the circle spins on, fierce and faithful.